Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. It's the Berkshire Battalion Signal Corps podcast. Al Kessler here, and I'm joined, of course, by the tough as nails Ross Jacobs. You proved that on Saturday.
Hello, Al.
How are you, Ross?
I am well, thank you. Keeping warm.
Same here. It was a crazy weekend, and we can predict another crazy weekend coming up as we've only got 15 games left here in the Federal Hockey League season. Let's talk about the weekend that was first. 2 games against Watertown, Friday and Saturday, and just leading up to Super Bowl Sunday, which, of course, I'm sure a lot of Battalion fans were excited about.
Go Pats.
Yeah, but now football season's over, we can really focus on this playoff push here. But a 3-2 overtime loss on Friday night, followed by a 6-1, just absolutely crazy affair on Saturday night. Let's start with the Friday night game, though. That overtime loss, it was Justin McDonald scoring with 6 seconds left in regulation, followed up by Cody Dion scoring in overtime to win that one. Just bad penalties at the end of the game really costing the Battalion.
Well, you can talk about them being a bad penalty, but let's remember what went on. There was a high-sticking call against Kaz, and that was something you have to call. And, you can't fault the ref for calling that. He had a stick up, and he clipped the dude in the face. But then, when we're already on the power play, Morty goes down or Goose goes down and takes out Joe St. Pierre.
Yeah, who is far out of his crease.
And when you look at the way he went down with his arms wide out and his legs wide open, Dan Morgan, the team photographer, he's got some great pictures of it. I mean, he had gone down earlier in the game. He had really whacked it. It was Kaz, right?
Yeah.
They whacked heads with Kaz on a rush in the second period. It took him a few minutes to get up. He clearly got his bell rung. But I think that was a really good sell job by Joe St. Pierre on that interference call. And that 5-on-3, and then they pulled the goalie to make it a 6-on-3. Well, it was just a matter of time before the tying goal went in. And then the weird FHL rule about all penalties are trimmed down to 1 minute for the start of the 5-minute 3-on-3 overtime, and it was over in 20-something seconds, and everybody was we're just disgusted. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the referees needed to sneak out of there real quick,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
They couldn't because there was a car accident up at the top of the exit, and a lot of people were stuck in the arena for several minutes afterwards.
Yeah, as we were. But
I'm glad to say everyone's okay, though.
I had a good talk after that game with Nathan Judd Warren, who's, of course, a Berkshire defenseman, former Watertown defenseman, saying that he understands what St. Pierre's doing. He's a real gamer. He's known for his gamesmanship and doing anything that you can to get your team an advantage. And Judzy was saying that, if it's our goalie who does it, you don't mind. But certainly a wild game there. Of course, Justin McDonald scoring with 6 seconds left to go. That was a killer.
But in general, though, I mean, this is obviously a case where, you look at the history of some of these refereeing crews, and a lot of them, to a fault almost, like to have the penalty calls be as even as possible. Mm-hmm. I've even had more than one ref team ask me at the end of the second period what the penalties have been so far. I think they want to keep in mind what's even and what's not. But with less than a minute left to call a 5-on-3 is having the referees basically decide the game. And there's something that just doesn't sit right about that call with me. I know a lot of the players in white and the coaching staff did not see it the same way. But it is just, I'm not going to sit here and impugn the refereeing staff explicitly. I don't want to name any names. I think we've seen varying levels of quality on the officiating through the history of this season, for sure.
Yeah, the same officiating crew actually was working the Saturday night game, and honestly,
same ref, different linesman.
Same ref, different lines, but really, it starts with the referee, the whole crew.
Brand new linesman too. Neither linesman had worked a battalion game at the foot before.
And I think that really showed because that game got out of control very, very quickly.
Oh, it did.
The refs had absolutely no handle on that game. It was some 200 some penalty minutes were called in that one. And before we get to the story of the game, let's read you off the suspensions that happened as a result of that game. Watertown forward and captain Lucas LaBelle placed on indefinite suspension by the league. Forward Matt Ray, wearing the number 24, placed on indefinite suspension by the league. Zach Hale, the defenseman, placed on a 7-game suspension for his penalty box antics. Justin McDonald with a 2-game suspension for his antics off the ice after getting ejected from the game. And on the home team side, Tristan Lisco with a 3-game suspension for his penalty box antics as well. Something which he actually admitted to and owned up to, which I thought was a little funny. Because I reviewed the video, which I sent to the league, of course, and you can't see anything going wrong with Lisco other than some shouting at the Watertown players, but he was very upset, I guess, the Zach Hale suspension for throwing his stick at some fans in the crowd, and Lisco was absolutely irate about that.
Yeah, that's inexcusable. Now, to recap for the people who didn't watch the game or weren't there, at the beginning of the second period, after a fairly chippy first period, there was a very quick fight. There was 2 immediate quick fights where both Brad Ritter and Tristan Lisco went off right at 20 minutes of the second period.
Ritter fought Chris McCarthy, and Tristan Lisco fought Matt Ray.
It's possible. Ray was all over the ice on Saturday.
I believe it was Matt Ray.
It's possible.
I could be incorrect.
For a second.
Because I remember that Lisco fought LaBelle in the third period, and part of the LaBelle suspension, LaBelle skated.
Lisco, Ritter, McCarthy, and LaBelle.
Oh, it was LaBelle.
Got the penalties to start off at the second period.
Oh, because it was the start of the second period when LaBelle skated out onto the ice and slashed Lisco in the back of his legs before the clock had even wound down for intermission.
There was definitely trouble brewing immediately there.
Yeah.
So what had happened was there was definitely a lot of chirping in the penalty boxes. Lisco obviously is a champion at that sort of thing, but he was getting as good as he gave. And then it got a little out of hand. I'm not even sure how it escalated, but that escalated quickly meme sort of took place in there, and a hot chocolate was launched into.
Well, no. You've got it mixed up. First, it was the McDonald incident with Keselowskis. During the play, Keselowskis was entering the zone. McDonald picked the puck away from him, fired it up the ice, and then proceeded to just bombard Keselowskis. He cross-checked him into the boards, and when he realized he was taking a penalty, he tried to get Keselowskis off the ice too. He dropped his gloves and just started swinging right hooks at Kaz's head, who didn't drop his gloves, and just attacked him.
That was the unsportsmanlike for shooting after the whistle, right?
No.
No, it was a different unsportsmanlike?
For who?
For Cody Dyan.
No. This was during the flow of play that McDonald was ejected.
Okay, this was after, because this is all at 2:37. This happened after I think the Dyan and Keselowskis thing, because Dyan's penalty was 2:09, and then Kaz and McDonald was 2:37. And yes, so that's when McDonald got the fighting, major game misconduct, and the 2-minute instigator penalty.
Yeah, and then that's when he was ejected. He was ejected into the as he was walking towards the penalty box. A fan said something to him from the bleachers, and McDonald immediately turned around and went straight up to the fan and started challenging him.
Oh, right. This is
pushing
on the other side. This is on the concourse side.
Yeah, I had a very good look at this actually. From my perch, but McDonald went right after the fan. They had to be separated, and then the whole fracas in the penalty box began.
But Clarkey went off the bench too, right? Didn't Brent Clark?
Half of the Watertown team.
I thought I saw him. I was nudging Bill Bird, saying, "Look, is Clarkey going after into the stands?"
Clark and about 6 of his players were in the stands, sticking up for their leading scorer.
I had visions of Terry O'Reilly taking his shoe off, beating a fan with it.
Was that O'Reilly or was that Milbury? I think it was Milbury.
It might have been Milbury.
I actually share a birthday with him, and interestingly enough, for all you Bruins fans, June 17th, the birthday of myself, Mike Milbury, and Dougie Hamilton. Of course, I've got nothing to do with the Bruins, but that's another story entirely.
And very quickly, speaking of birthdays, tomorrow, February 5th, Darren Lane's birthday.
No way! Happy birthday, Darren! Oh my gosh, I'm glad you let me know. That should be good. So hopefully we can get some wins for our boss this weekend.
Yeah. Anyway, going back on, yes, there was the problem on that side of the ice, and I guess I'd also heard that as McDonald was actually even leaving out in the front of the ice, he was continually being accosted by some Berkshire fans as well.
Although to be honest, he really, from what I saw, he really instigated that. He could have just, shrugged off what the fans were saying and just walked to the penalty box, but he went out of his way to go into the stands to continue the discussion with one of these fans.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that would have accomplished. And that's funny, too, because where he was where a lot of the out-of-town Watertown fans sit when they come in the building.
Yeah. And very interesting, and a whole big show started in the penalty boxes as well, which you can obviously speak to with more accuracy than I can, because I just had to look from across the rink.
Yes, this was after McDonald had been ejected. Kaz was in the penalty box with, let's see now, Lisko and Ritter were still in there. Kaz had just come in. And then I don't think this happened until later on, because when you think about who was actually in the box at the time, I think Corey Evelyn was in the box.
He was.
Phil Bronner was in the box. Cody Dine was in the box. Zach Hale was in the box, serving, I think Cody Evelyn was serving...
He was
serving McDonald's minor,
yeah.
serving McDonald's major, he was serving a penalty in there for someone because he doesn't have anything called on him.
Yeah, I think Matt Ray in the box as well.
Ray was also in the box, I think.
Yeah.
There was certainly a whole bunch of people in there
because there were two in there for the McDonald penalty. There was the 2-minute instigator. One guy serving the 2-minute instigator, that was Evelyn, and I believe Ray was in there serving the 5-minute.
Yeah, that must be what it is after the ejection from McDonald. So they were obviously both benches were both penalty boxes were crammed with angry players. And at the time, I think it was still a very close game. It was still 1-1 or 1-0 even. I mean, because Berkshire had just gone up 2-0, I think. So it was still a pretty close game, but they were still down. And the jawing started, and I'm pretty sure, again, this was a very blurry and very adrenaline-fueled as I found myself a little bit in the middle of it. A hot chocolate was thrown into the Watertown bench. It actually got all over Bill Bird.
Oh, really?
And Athena's, our gamekeeper, our game timekeeper, Athena, it's her computer that we use. So there was a lot of that, but it did get into the bench as well. So it found its mark, and that got the Watertown guys justifiably upset. It was not cool. I didn't see who did it at the time, but we found out later that Tristan, who was, like you said, stand up, admitted his role in it. I was like, yeah, dude, a fan threw hot chocolate in there. He was like, no, it was me.
Yeah. Well, and I believe this was in reaction to a fan having thrown something into the box.
Well,
and Watertown players were trying to get out of the box and ended up throwing their sticks at fans.
Right. After what happened was, I believe the hot chocolate got thrown. The Watertown players started getting very upset. Bill told them to sit down and close the penalty bench doors. They failed to do so. There was some jawing going on, and a puck came flying from over the bleachers. This one definitely, you could tell from the trajectory, came flying over the penalty box glass and actually landed in the bench. That's when all four of the Watertown players, if they had, super spider abilities, were trying to climb up the penalty bench glass, which is probably at least, 9 feet tall.
Yeah. And I actually recall there were some more Watertown players skating over trying to get into the box. It was crazy because the Watertown bench was totally empty except for Spider, their equipment guy, because half of the team was in the lobby with McDonald and half of the team was in the penalty box trying to get over the boards.
Yes. They were literally trying to jump over the boards, in skates and wearing 20 pounds of equipment. So that's when the sticks went over. I honestly thought it was Evelyn who threw the stick. It turns out it was Hale who was standing next to Evelyn. But we were trying to maintain some order. I at one point had gotten in to try to enforce Bill's request that the penalty bench door stayed closed, and that didn't turn out well. then after the sticks went flying over, I had to station myself kind of in front of the back door of the penalty box, of the media box, to make sure that nobody got in and nobody got out, because I didn't think that it should have never gotten to that point anyway.
Yeah. Well, frankly, the whole thing, and I said this for those of you who watched the broadcast, I actually gave you a shout out, Ross, saying that you were, defending the door very well. But it was just a disaster. It was just an absolute disgrace.
There was bad behavior. I mean, you have to call out the Berkshire fans, guys. You can't act like that.
Yeah.
Do not. I think we will all be very disappointed. To all the Berkshire fans who are proud and honorable people, don't throw crap into the penalty box. Don't get in the face of the players.
Yeah,
just behave yourselves.
And to be honest, on the other side of the token, obviously there's that share of people, but these young men are professional athletes, and they're expected to conduct themselves as such. And fans will throw stuff, fans will yell stuff, but they have to let the stadium staff deal with that. They have to let the security, the very competent, I might add, security people at the Peter W. Foot do their jobs, make sure that this gets nipped in the bud. And by getting involved, they're just making it worse.
Yeah.
And frankly, they were the cause of some of these things. Like I was saying with the Justin McDonald incident, he went up to the fan. In that situation, as a professional athlete, I understand that you're very upset, that you've got, high emotions there, but you have to understand you're a professional athlete. You have to just turn around and walk away.
Yep.
People are going to say stuff.
You're a pro, you do your job. And part of your job is to get heckled as a pro athlete. You get your support at home, you get heckled on the road. But, and if you are afeared for your safety because of objects being thrown, then you work with the game officials who are neutral to establish a security perimeter. You don't take it upon yourself to jump up on the penalty bench and whip sticks in the crowd. We have kids at that game. There are young kids all over that place. And, if you want to be the guy who throws a stick that bops a 2-year-old off the head,
and
that's the end of your career.
That's actually was part of the big issue when talking to Tristan Lisco about what he did in the penalty boxes. He was upset about that the fan that they were doing all this stuff and there were just kids sitting right there in the crowd. But then the rest of the game unfolded. Really, it was just Watertown came out trying to play the goon game, play the physical game, and Berkshire came out and played hockey. And that 6-1 result is a clear departure of that, because at the time of all these penalties, it was a 1-0 game.
That's right. It was, and then it very quickly became 2-0 after Dolman scored in the power play, the resulting power play.
The 5-on. It was Dolman scoring on the 5-on-3 man advantage.
Yep.
Shortly followed by Jeff Sanders on the 5-on-4 power play, and so that made it 3-0. And then I believe Watertown.
No, Sanders was third period.
Oh, that's right.
So second period ended 2-1 after Chad Bennett came back in and scored a 13-20
He was the rookie of the month, by the way, in the Federal Hockey League.
Oh, good for him. And it was. I think you could really tell. It was really. After something like that, it can kind of really go either way, to a total, complete and utter, irretrievable meltdown, or you could tell that some of these guys maybe had a second to cool down and realized things had crossed the line.
Yeah.
And the third period really did calm down. You could tell that there was, I guess, some of the wind had come out of Watertown sails. It was Louis George stepping up, making some excellent saves in that third period.
Save of the year.
Absolutely. He's reaching back. Tuukka. How did he even? And then Prendergast. Then there was a big scoring flurry at the very end of the third period, the second half of the third period, with 4 goals in 5 minutes, between 10:27 and 16:53. The very last goal, the 6th goal, was an absolute sick assist. Mm-hmm. Prendergast on his butt, whipping his stick around to feed Dolman to just bury an empty net with no chance for Joe St. Pierre.
He stick-handled through Zach Hale's legs. And actually, we're gonna say his name a lot because Zach Hale got really victimized in that game. One of my favorite goal that the battalion scored in that game was Vladislav Gavrik screaming up the right wing. He's got Hale on him. Hale tries to lay the body on Gavrik and gets absolutely wiped out, absolutely demolished by the bigger Gavrik. And Gavrik just sets up behind the net and sets up Guskov for his second goal of the game.
Yeah.
Absolute beauty of a goal. And then I think what really added insult to injury was after the empty net goal by Tracy, which made it 5-1. It was Mike Dolman scoring his second of the game on Kozlinski, the backup.
Yeah,
and that was just some extra Kalchinski, some extra little salt in the wound there.
Yeah, that was Prendergast's assist right there. It was against Kalchinski. And again, that was the page out of the Patrick Roy playbook where Clarkey pulls the goalie with 5 minutes left to go. I mean, he's down, was it 4-1 at the time? So why not? But it was cool, and that kind of leads into, away from all of that, it was a very good victory, and we have a lot of games against Watertown left, so definitely stay tuned with that. But I think that segues into something that I did want to talk about with you is the addition of Tom Tracy to the lineup. Now, about 20 games in, 25 games into the season, we landed from Steel City Robert Morton and Tom Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of those guys, in all the talk that we've had, over the past, the stars of this team, we've talked a lot about Louis, we've talked a lot about Goose and Dolman and Unak and Kaz and a lot of the guys who have been with the team since day one. But when you take a look at the upturn of the team's fortunes since Darren took over coaching for Dan Farrell, two of the guys who have been most instrumental in this have been Morty and Tracy. And you look at Tracy and his stats as he has been going through the season. Excuse me. A lot of multiple assist games, 2 assists, 3 assists, a goal and 2 goals and an assist. This guy is a spark plug and a very underrated member of this team. I wanted to make sure that the fans kept an eye on him.
Yeah.
Number 3, Tom Tracy. He's a little guy.
An interesting note about Tracy, 2 weekends ago in Watertown, there was a 4-3 finish where Watertown stormed back and scored late. That was on the road. And if Tom Tracy was telling me if that was his 50th game of the season, if he had gotten a point in that game, Tracy would have been only the second player in the FHL, it was Tracy's 30th game. As if Tracy had scored a point in that game, he would have been the second player in the FHL behind Justin McDonald to score 50 points in 30 games, which is crazy.
Well, you take a look right now, he's got 31 games between his 20 games with Steel City and 11 games with Berkshire. Mm-hmm. 31 games, 46 points, 18 goals, 28 assists. And since he's come to the battalion, so he's played 11 games, 19 points, so he's continued that pace.
Yeah.
And a +6. Now, he was a -13 with Steel City, but I think almost everybody on Steel City's roster is a -13.
I think everybody is, yeah. I think it's impossible to be a plus.
Whole lot about him. But when you even take a look at the scoring leaders, he is well up in the league. I mean, he's not at the very top or anything like that, but Tracy is, let's see now, he is right now tied for 11th with Lucas LaBelle.
Mm-hmm. And scoring depth really has just been the story for this Berkshire Battalion team and part of this turnaround. I mean, it's Tracy, it's his line mates, Kozlowskis and Morton. I mean, those two are playing phenomenally. This Russian line that we have now, well, the Soviet line, as they call themselves, with Antipin and Guskov, who are the Russians, and Vladislav Gavrik, who's Ukrainian, speaks fluent Russian. And they're the three of them are really gelling together. I mean, as you saw, a 3-point night from Guskov last night, and that was good to see him break out because he's been streaky lately. But it was really good to see him have such a big game. I'm very excited for him.
That's true. And another Gordie Howe.
Gordie Howe.
For Goose. He's tough for a European.
Yeah.
But when you take a look at the scoring leaders, you've got Dolman, who's 7th in the league with 50 points in 37 games. And Guskov is 10th with 48 points in 39 games. Then Tracy is tied with LaBelle for 11th. And then you go down 17th, Unak, and then Morty.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've got a bunch of guys here in the team who, and I don't think, apart from Dolman and Lester Brown early on in the season, there were that many scoring leaders in, wearing the red, white, and blue. So, this is a team that I think is, again, we've been saying it all along, slowly finding its stride and playing better, especially against the good teams here in the league. And adding touch. I mean, still got to work on those special teams. The PK is, got a lot, still riding on it. I noticed actually at one point during the Watertown game that there were 5 forwards on the penalty kill. I mean, 5 forwards, not on the penalty kill. I mean, on the power play. 5 forwards, not even 4 forwards and a defenseman, which is Darren's usual method. Since Sanders has come back, it's been 4 forwards and Sanders playing the power play. But there was even one point where Sanders was even on the bench, and they had 5 forwards playing on the power play.
I do believe Sanders is on the first power play unit, and the second power play unit consists of Morton and Tracy working the points.
Right.
But let's talk for a bit about Martin Unak. Just step aside from the battalion hockey for a second. Of course, our battalion boy has gone to Granada, Spain, to play for his Slovakian national team. They played this afternoon, if you're listening on Wednesday afternoon. They lost 6-3 to the Czech Republic. No points for Uno, just 2 shots on net, was 60% on the face-off dot. He's wearing the number 6 for his national team, which is interesting. But for those of you who are excited and want to see him play, make sure you check out, it's the World University Games, so you can Google the World University Games, and it's the International Federation of University Athletics, I believe, or University Sports. And at Friday at 2:30 our time, the Slovaks are going to be playing the Chinese. So you'll get a chance to watch Martin Unak play for his national team over in Spain. Certainly, his presence, the lack of his presence is certainly going to be felt by the Berkshire Battalion, but there's going to have to definitely be some stepping up to fill in that role. And it's going to be interesting to see how they respond, because he sort of addressed some of the players afterwards, and he wants to come back to a playoff team. And I think that this whole Berkshire team is really hungry. They believe that if they can make the playoffs, which is honestly going to be very tough, but if they can make the playoffs, they feel that they can win it all.
They can, because you can see that over the last month or so, they've stepped up their game against Watertown. They've stepped up their game against Danbury. They've still had their ups and downs against Dayton, and they lost that last big one, the last home game against Danville.
Mm-hmm.
But with the way that the scoring touch has developed, with the absolute stepping up and just taking control of the goaltending situation by Louis George.
Yeah, and to give a shout out to backup netminder Steve Messina, who played up in Watertown 2 weekends ago and was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, he did great. The score wasn't the way he wanted it, but he really did a great job up there. Looking forward to a home start for Mess.
Plus, the home fans know he's tough.
The only thing the home fans have seen him do so far is take out Kevin Hoy of the Danbury Whalers.
Yeah,
which was awesome. But it's really the only thing they've seen him do. So, Darren, if you're listening, let's have a start for Messina at home so the fans can watch the boy.
Yeah, but some of the other changes, the Danbury Whalers, who were lined up to play 3 games against this weekend at home on Friday night. We hope you're all there. If you can't be there, of course, watch my broadcast on pointstreak.com.
Giving away a car.
We're giving away a car. I'm probably not going to get it, though.
I'm not eligible.
Dang, I'm probably not either.
I could really use a new car, though.
Yeah, I could, too. But I think we all could. Well, I guess you've learned to win a car, you've either got to shoot the puck really well or make a game-winning interception in the Super Bowl, and that gets you a car.
And then hope the quarterback gives it to you. Yeah. Nope. Thanks to our friendly sponsors at Haddad Auto Group. We are check the battalion Facebook page for details on that contest.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. But the Danbury Whalers in an absolute tailspin lately. Last 10 games for the last few games for the Danbury Whalers, as we look here, they're not playing well. They've really struggled.
2-8, right? They have 6 in a row at one point.
Mm-hmm. They are 2-8 now after a long road trip, and they've totally just opened up the floodgates. Some of the changes that Danbury has made, Robert Dongara, the forward, traded to Dayton for Clinton, Dan Morin, the defenseman, Clinton Atkinson, the Danville defenseman, traded to the Danbury Whalers in return for, as we look here, I believe he was just traded straight up. The Watertown Wolves sending Colby Spooner to Danbury in return for the speedy scoring winger Mike Zanella. And Warren Galloway traded to the Berkshire Battalion.
Right.
So we'll see if he actually will come up and play. I know he did not want to come up and play originally. He may change his mind now.
Yes, this would be Warren's second shot at having his rights owned by the battalion. I don't believe they came to terms the first time,
They didn't.
and he went back to Dayton for Antipin, right?
Yes.
And now here he is, maybe, I don't know, just for cash or a player to be named later. We're not quite sure. But Galloway is a 30 or 31-year-old defenseman, and 6 foot, 185, so a pretty sturdy-looking guy. Don't know that he's got a ton of game experience with Danbury, as he's been probably floating around back and forth somewhat. And it's funny that he's coming because we have just finally, after Sanders and Dadsey and Andrew Dads have come back from their injuries, a full 6-person defensive corps.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've carried 3 full defensive pairings.
I don't believe that Galloway has played for Danbury yet this season. He is a former Watertown Wolf as well, just like Nathan Judd Warren. But the number, when I look at his stats, the number that really sticks out to me is that 30 years old. And I'll tell you why. The Berkshire Battalion are one of the youngest teams in the Federal Hockey League. I think our oldest guy is Matt Hamilton.
Yeah, Hammy, who's 27.
Yeah. And everybody else is younger than Hamilton, and not a lot of pro experience on this team.
Yeah.
I mean, really, everybody's been looking up to Hamilton as sort of the veteran on this squad, and of course now he's likely going to be out for the season, assuming some coaching duties with the team now. But having some veteran leadership and a veteran presence on the team could be very, very helpful. As we talked about birthdays, actually, this past Monday was Brad Ritter's birthday.
Oh, that's right. Bulldog.
So happy birthday to Brad.
Yeah.
But I think that definitely an infusion of some older experience is certainly going to be a good thing. I think one person who's brought that, even though he's not actually that old, but he's got that level-headed, he plays like a veteran, is Mike McCurtain, the big forward. And one thing I noticed intently about the game against Watertown on Saturday, when they were taking some liberties with some of the Berkshire players, none of the Watertown players said anything to McCurtain. None of them said anything to Judd Warren. They kind of stayed away from our bigger guys.
Right.
And I think, in addition to that, Judd Warren's been a fantastic addition, not just for his play on the ice, but his work off the ice. He's really helped, I think, some of the defensive players on this team really establish an identity.
Very solid. And he is actually the youngest member of the team right now, at 22.
Yeah, just barely older than me, unfortunately. I was older than Rosebrook, but fortunately he was let go. But yeah, so we've got a 3-game set against Danbury on Friday. You can come down to the Foot and win a car. Of course, we're going to be in Danbury on Saturday and Sunday. That's February 7th and 8th. The Sunday game is going to be a 5 p.m. start at the Danbury Ice Arena. And I just wanted to give a shout-out quickly to one of the Danbury fans, actually one of these Section 102 fans, Walter Henderson, who just passed away this Monday. He was a heck of a man, a Connecticut state senator. He and his son, Jeff Henderson, who I'm very friendly with, big vocal supporters in Section 102. And actually, Walter told me just last 2 weeks ago that he was a huge fan of the Berkshire Battalion, mostly because of how hard they played the Danbury Whalers. And even though the Whalers were his hometown team, he really liked what he saw from Berkshire. But certainly he will be missed.
Our thoughts and prayers with their family.
Absolutely. As it's going to be a big weekend, 3 games against Danbury, trying to catch Danville. And
then a road trip. So this is going to be the last home game for a while. It's going to be a good game, I think. We've got a full complement, and I think the battalion are really hitting their stride. Come out, there's going to be the giveaways and the contest, and the armory is always going to be there. And they were a great part of the game on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And as much as it got a little nuts, let's be very clear, it was not the armory that was that was doing any of that stuff. It was a bunch of renegade fans on both the concourse exit side and directly behind the penalty bench. So the Armory is not, at all responsible for any of the shenanigans on Saturday. So way to keep it classy, fellas.
Yeah, they are the best. That road trip that you were talking about, that's coming up next weekend, Friday the 13th of February, is the battalion are going to be in Dayton. Then they travel on Saturday and Sunday, the 14th and 15th of February. They're going to be in Danville, and following that up with a very rare Monday game on the 16th of February in Steel City. And that'll be that road trip. From then on, it's mostly home games. It'll be Friday the 20th against Watertown, then Saturday and Sunday the 21st and 22nd of February. It's going to be the battalion are going to host Steel City, so a 3-game homestand there, followed up the next Friday. Friday and Saturday will be a 2-game set against Watertown, as the season actually is going to end with 5 games in a row against Watertown. So Friday and Saturday, February the 27th and 28th. The Friday game is in Berkshire, the Saturday game in Watertown. Then Saturday, March 7th, Sunday, March 8th is going to be another home-and-home series, so Saturday in Berkshire, Sunday in Watertown. And then finally, this season's going to end Thursday, April the 2nd, when the battalion go to Watertown to finish up this FHL 5th season on the road against the top team in the Federal Hockey League. And
hopefully there'll be some playoffs in the offering. The team is going to have to work hard. They may have to get some breaks from some other teams as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you've mentioned it, and I've been thinking it. If they do get into the playoffs, these guys have as much of a shot as any other team.
They are from what I've seen and the guys that I've talked to, they are a very hungry team. They really want to win this. They really want to, at the very least, make the playoffs. And I think that's really they're not really thinking about the first round or who they'll match up against. They're just, all they want to do is make the playoffs right now.
Exactly.
And that's forefront on their mind. So we hope you all come out and support the team this weekend. It should be a great Friday night game. I'm sure a lot of people will be there. A lot of people want a chance to win that car. But it's going to be interesting. And also, of course, the FHL fan voting is up now. And, of course, I have to plug myself shamelessly. But you can go on the Federal Hockey League website and vote for your favorite All-Stars. Vote for Darren Lane as Coach of the Year. You can vote for any of the battalion players, Guskov, Dolman, Louis George, who I personally have been plugging for Rookie of the Year. I hope some of the other guys don't mind. But I really think George is won the chance of Rookie of the Year. And actually,
MVP as well. I mean, I think you can look for Louis to be MVP. Mike Dolman.
Actually, sorry, I'm looking at the FHL website. They've just updated it. Louis George, goaltender of the month for the month of January.
Congratulations, Louis.
Sporting a 6-3-2 record in 12 games with a 3.64 goals against average and a .912 save percentage.
Yep. You take a look there at federalhockey.com. You take a look at that picture of Louis, and he looks very serious. This is in the game shirts, but looking very good. He absolutely deserves it. Game after game, playing very solid, leading the league in saves. And he's had to deal with the defense in front of him being short-staffed,
mm-hmm.
and forwards being transformed into defensemen. That's always tough on a goalie. That's one of the things that I think Watertown is very good at, is they have some very, very strong defense in front of them, making Joe St. Pierre look a lot stronger than someone in like Louis' position. But you take a look at the amount of shots Louis taken versus the amount of saves he's done.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely responsible for a great number of wins for this team.
Yeah, I definitely think Louis deserving of consideration for both Rookie of the Year and MVP as well. If it's not for a strong goaltender, I hate to say it, that this Berkshire team, given its early struggles, could potentially be in a Steel City type of situation if we don't have somebody like Louis George in between the pipes to really stand on his head night in, night out. And do the job well. But, of course, you can also, on the FHL fan vote, you can also vote for your favorite broadcaster of the year. Of course, myself, Al Kessler. I'm campaigning for myself, naturally. I think there's some very talented broadcasters in the league, but, frankly, I think I'm the best, and I really want to win it.
You deserve it, buddy.
But, so it's going to be exciting to see this season wrap up. Certainly, I'm crossing my fingers, hoping to see some playoffs in the Berkshires, because I think that the way the fans have responded, the way the team has responded, I think that the whole city of North Adams just deserves to have at least one playoff series here in the final stretch.
looking forward to it.
All right. Well, that concludes this episode of the Berkshire Battalion Signal Corps podcast. We went almost 40 minutes with this one, Ross.
A lot to talk about.
But we have a lot more to talk about. We'll be back with you next week. We hope you enjoy this weekend's action against the Danbury Whalers. Al Kessler, Ross Jacobs. Ross, any final word?
Nope. I'm just glad to see that the team is doing well. Glad to see that the fan support is still there. It's been cold. It's been snowy. It's been hard to get out and about some of these game nights, but the fans are still turning out. I would like to see more of you out there. It's a great night's entertainment.
Absolutely, and so we'll see you on Friday night before the boys hit the road. But thank you so much for tuning in. It's the Berkshire Battalion Signal Corps podcast covering the weekend that was and the weekend to come. We'll be back with you next week. Enjoy the weekend, ladies and gentlemen.